What's up, party people? Welcome back to another episode of Party XP. Fuck, what the fuck? I can't do this. I got stage fright. I'm worried about.
Do you want me to lead?
No.
Being judged, you're out of your element.
Right. I'm on this side of the table now. All right. Now, so I'm on the other side of the table because I am not joined by Lakan today. I am joined by our good friend Andrew. Say hi, Andrew.
I'm back, and I'm better than ever.
Got a knack for making things better. I forget the rest of the words. Anyway, so it's me and Andrew today. Lakan is sitting over here in the Jamie seat. Say hi, Lakan.
Hi, everybody. I am here, but I'm not important today.
Right, because
You're always important, though.
Thank you.
that's very nice.
I needed that.
But today we're talking pro wrestling, so that's why Lakan's not here. We got the experts in. I had to have one of the heavy hitters here to talk pro wrestling. And more specifically, we're going to draft wrestling games. We're on the road to WrestleMania, right?
Right.
And so what better time to start thinking about old wrestling games than moving towards WrestleMania, which is 2 months away.
Are you excited? I'm super excited for WrestleMania.
Nope. I'm
Okay.
waiting for Vince to croak.
Ooh, yikes.
No, but, look, regardless of how you feel about what's going on in the world, and I think we can, kind of skip that.
Yeah,
for
we
right
could denounce him if you'd like right here,
now.
right now.
Yeah, you know what? Party XP is an anti-Vince McMahon action podcast. We're going to go ahead and denounce Vince McMahon's actions here pretty publicly, I'd say, right?
I guess we're doing that? Sure, I guess. I don't know what's happening.
You took a dump on an intern or something?
Oh, Jesus. Okay, yeah, no, fuck Vince McMahon then.
Well, and then he was also going to pimp her out or something like that.
Okay,
yeah.
fuck that dude.
Yeah, see, okay, so we're going to denounce Vince McMahon right here. But we are going to talk about his company, hopefully outside of him. But we're going to draft a few games here. So, what I have...
Shit, all my games are Vince-centric.
You had the only Vince McMahon, RPG?
Yeah,
That's the only wrestling game you've ever played?
exactly.
So, I have 5 categories here. We're going to start anywhere you want, really. We can draft anything, but these are just the 5 categories that we're going to draft games for. So the first off is going to be a Golden Era logo game. Not necessarily Golden Era, but as long as it has that big, blocky WWF logo, not the scratched logo, right?
Right.
That would fit that criteria. Then, any N64 game related to wrestling. A PlayStation game, any PlayStation, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, related to pro wrestling. Any game that came out after 2010, and then a wild card. So it doesn't have to be necessarily a WWF or WWE game. It could be any sort of wrestling game. It can have a WWE or WCW wrestler in it. If you want to take the Scorpion King for the GameCube, it's on the table.
I'm ready to take the Fast and the Furious with the Rock.
Yeah. That would count. That would absolutely count. Or if you want, you can just take another game from those previous 4 categories that we just didn't pick. So I'll let you lead off because I'm a gracious host. And I'm going to let you pick whatever game you want to pick first, whatever category you want to pick first. It's up to you. All right. Round 1, pick 1.
Ooh,
Andrew.
This is a lot of pressure out here. The first pick of the draft is always, tough one. But
This is going to set your franchise forward or backwards. So be careful here.
I think I'm going to go with the oldest choices here. I've been a big wrestling fan probably all my life.
We
So
probably should have talked about that shit.
yeah,
You know what? Let's do that. Let's keep them in. That's what we call a tease in the industry. So you're gonna have to wait for Buffa's pick 1 after we talk about ourselves for a few minutes here. So talk about your history because I know you have an extensive history, just like me. You started probably about the same time I did.
so I feel like some of my first memories of life are of wrestling.
Right.
Like when I was a little baby, there's pictures of me dressed as Hulk Hogan, dressed as the Ultimate Warrior, stuff like that. So I was born, the late '80s. So that's right in, like you said, that golden era.
Right.
So I've kind of been watching wrestling since that point. How some kids today, they watch Bluey, stuff like that. We were just putting on old wrestling tapes.
Nice.
So, and I know even before I was born, my family would get together and have WrestleMania parties or SummerSlam parties and stuff like that. So I think at our house we had WrestleMania because we only had WrestleMania tapes, and
Right.
my cousins did SummerSlam because as I got older, I was like, how come we don't have any SummerSlams in our tape library? And I'm like, oh, we watched over there. So,
Right.
I go way back and kind of been watching wrestling steadily ever since. I fell off a little in the probably the early 2010s.
Right.
I was still keeping up with it, but I I used to watch every Monday Raw.
We were
Yeah.
out drinking. That's why.
Yeah, I think I got more into like real sports,
Right.
And then I came back to wrestling,
Right.
So that's kind of where I'm at.
What's it about wrestling to you? Why do you keep coming back to it? Why do you enjoy it so much?
I think it's just the larger than life characters, the stories. Like I said, I grew up like in the '80s, '90s, so like that Hulk Hogan, that Ultimate Warrior, Undertaker, Bret Hart, like all those early guys, like I was huge into. And then like when you got into the Attitude Era. Like, that's when other people started getting involved in wrestling, and people were like, whoa, you watch wrestling?
Right.
And I was like, well, finally, people are starting to get into this stuff.
So, yeah, I was about the same time. Like, my cousins are older than me, so they would have wrestling on all the time. I would go to my aunt's house on Sunday, so that was like the advent of Sunday Night Heat.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like Sunday Night Heat was my first taste of wrestling. I ended up watching WCW, though. I was a WCW kid growing up, but I always still watched WWF because of the Saturday morning shows.
Yeah.
My father was like, even though he'd be very simpatico with Stone Cold these days, for his 5-year-old, I didn't think he was too much of a fan of Stone Cold and DX and all that. But I still had a chance, obviously I still had the Saturday morning show that I would watch and like switch over real fast. So I did have both leagues. You're just WWF though, huh?
I was watching WC, like, in like 96, 97, we were kind of flipping back and forth between the channels, and, like, I guess when the raunchy stuff was on, we'd kind of change it, so, like...
You didn't get in trouble?
Yeah, my parents didn't walk in, it's like, what the heck are you watching? We're like, see, look, it's Hulk Hogan, he's still on there. And they're like, oh, Hulk Hogan, fine.
Why is he wearing black? Never mind.
Yeah. God forbid that, like some woman would be getting their clothes ripped off, and like my parents would walk in, like, what are you doing?
Right, exactly. Chris, what are you doing?
But greased up muscle men is perfectly fine.
Yes.
Okay, got it. Okay, understood.
That's American society.
Yes.
Yeah, you're right.
We love naked men, naked women.
We love violence.
Yeah.
Adult levels of violence on television, TV, PG, TV 14. One single bit of cleavage, MA.
Yeah, exactly.
Because, the goddamn Puritans took over the world.
There you go.
Well, denouncing the Puritans also.
I can't because, as my grandmother liked to remind everybody, we have ancestry from the Mayflower. So I wouldn't be here. I don't know where I'd be if it wasn't for them, but yeah, fuck them. Anyway, man, I'm on a heater today. That's what happens when you don't get sleep, man.
Yeah, I was
When
going to say,
you're
watch out anybody.
know.
Jeff's coming for you.
That's what happens when you're sleep deprived, man. You just say whatever's on your mind here. But yeah, so like, I grew up, obviously, kind of the same as you. I watched WCW. I watched WWF. Once WCW, folded up, I, jump ship to WWF.
Begrudgingly.
Not really, because I was watching it, and I did have guys that I really liked, especially during that era. Obviously, like Stone Cold and The Rock.
I think luckily also that so many guys are jumping ship that you recognize guys. Oh, Chris Jericho's here. Oh, there's Paul White, the Giant.
Right. Yeah, and then it got to the point where it was like, oh, well, there's Goldberg. There's
there's the NWO.
Right.
All these guys.
Yeah, so I think that kind of helped things too, and also kind of helped that I was watching it, like, and playing the games as well. I think playing the games, like, even though I wasn't watching too much WWF, I was still getting WWF games, and I was still playing the games with all these people. So I knew all of them, even when I started watching WWF full time. As kind of the years went on, I was a big TNA guy. I remember going. I tell this story all the time. It's just so funny that I did this, because I didn't want to spend $4 on a pay-per-view every week. I would go to Best Buy in Woodbridge, go to the home entertainment section, and watch the weekly TNA pay-per-views because they were in like the home entertainment system. So that's how I would watch TNA, and then eventually they landed like the TV contract, so I watched TNA. But I've always kind of been like looking for, I always kind of kept my options open. I wasn't just like a one-trick pony. I always wanted to keep my options open and watch a lot of pro wrestling. I do enjoy a lot of different companies. I still like TNA. I don't get to watch as much. I like AEW. I don't get to watch as much. Begrudgingly, like when WWE is on, like I do, the big pay-per-views usually before the baby was born, we'd get together and we'd watch them. I do keep up. I know what's going on. But
I think it's the easiest to consume also just
is.
because it's on so many different channels. Like there's so many ways to consume it. You
Yep.
could just click on YouTube and it's right there.
Right, exactly. And it's easy to talk about because so many people are watching now. Wrestling kind of had this renaissance in the last few years where it stopped being like, oh, ew, you watch wrestling, to, oh, you watch wrestling again.
Wrestling fans are pretty crazy though because like once somebody hears you start talking about, they'll come out of the woodwork.
Yeah.
Like I tell this story all the time. I used to work at a restaurant, and me and a couple of guys were talking about it, like in the dining area, and then like it was WrestleMania time, so then like 4 people from all different tables, like all different ages. One guy was probably like 80, one guy was like 20. They all just started coming up. It's like, oh, you're talking about WrestleMania? Like, I'm excited for this match. I'm excited for that match. And it's like, oh, see, like, you just
Right.
kind of need to spark the conversation.
And that is the cool. I will say that is, like I said, it is the cool thing about WrestleMania season. It's kind of like the Super Bowl. Everybody like gets ramped up. All the companies are going to be in Philly. They're going to be running shows all weekend. There's going to be great wrestling all weekend, and then the big event. There's nothing like it. That anticipation, that excitement. There is nothing like WrestleMania season. So begrudgingly, I will say, yeah, it is. It is a good time as we inch closer to the middle of April here. It is a lot of fun. But so that's kind of where I'm at. And we talked about where you at. So
okay, so now the games, I guess.
How
right?
about it? How about it? 1-1.
Okay, I'm taking. So, like I said, I got indoctrinated into wrestling at a very young age.
Yeah.
Kind of the first game I remember like being cognizant of playing is the game I'm going to pick. I'm picking WWF WrestleMania Challenge for the Nintendo Entertainment System.
Holy crap. No Mercy is not 1-1. I might
No.
just pick it just to win the social media graphic. WrestleMania Challenge. Okay, so talk to me a little bit about that. I know it kind of, but who's in it? I think Hogan's on the cover, right?
So there was 5 guys on the cover. It's Hogan, Andre, the Macho King, Randy Savage,
Okay.
Big Boss Man, and the Ultimate Warrior.
I do remember this, yeah.
So I believe there's like 9 or 10 guys. Like I said, I played it when I was little, and that's kind of like my first memory I have, especially with the wrestling. And like it was so cool because like
I do remember this.
There was tag matches, there was single match. There was also like the first kind of like player avatar. There was like just a character named You. It was just a generic white guy.
Regardless of who you were playing this
Right,
game.
so it's just like, oh, it's you. Oh, it's like, oh, I'm wrestling Hulk Hogan.
You're
This
right.
is great. But I liked it. It was very basic.
Yeah.
But it had when you tag, like, say you were playing a tag match, and when a wrestler jumped in the ring, his theme music would play in like that chip tuney kind of like Nintendo shit.
Yeah.
So that's kind of always how I was like, they're playing the theme music. It's so cool.
That is
for
pretty
back
sweet.
then.
That is cool.
But who else was in it? Ravishing Recruit, Jim Duggan, Brutus Beefcake.
Oh my god. The names.
Yeah,
Okay.
all the classics.
Right. Okay. So I'm going to be fair. I'm going to take this is your golden era pick.
Yes.
I'll also take my golden era pick because this is the first wrestling game that I remember playing.
Okay.
And it's WrestleMania, the arcade game.
I was also thinking about that
yeah.
for a little bit.
So for me, that was the first wrestling game that I ever really played and got into. Now, I had it for the Super Nintendo.
Okay.
There is a PlayStation version, and an arcade version, of course, obviously. So I have played all of the versions since. The SNES version doesn't have Yokozuna and Bam Bam. The music's not as good. The graphics aren't as good. But damn it, that's my game.
Isn't it crazy? Like back then, there was like exclusive Wrestlers 4 games.
Yeah.
I remember they did that for a couple games.
Right. And even still, like I think they couldn't fit Bam Bam and Yoko on the cartridge.
Yeah, on the cartridge. That's
So-
why, like on the CDs,
Yeah.
it made sense.
Right. And I guess because they were like the big guys, you couldn't fit it. Ha ha ha.
Ha 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 ha.
But I don't know, man. I loved that game. It was
No,
it
those
was,
games are very fun
Yeah.
because of all like it was a wrestling game, quote unquote, but it was more like because it was made by the same company that did Mortal Kombat.
Yeah.
It borrowed like a lot of that, like
Yeah, exactly. Like the back forward back punch
Right.
did moves and the crazy combos and the things like you could like Lex Luger's hands would turn into a mace and he'd start smashing people. The Undertaker had like demons he'd shoot out at you.
right, and he was hitting people with actual like tombstones.
Yes.
Not the pile driver, but
Right.
the
But that was in there
gravestones.
too.
Right.
Even though it was backwards.
And then Doink had like the buzzer.
Yeah,
whatever
the
that
joy
electric
buzzer
you
and the
could do.
hammer and all of that. Bam Bam, I know Bam Bam would like light people on fire.
Yeah.
That was kind of his thing. Yokozuna just had his giant ass and would just slam people and all of that. But for me, like I just remember playing that all day, like all the time. Even as I got more wrestling games on Super Nintendo, like I got Super WrestleMania and WWF Raw. Those were the I don't want to. I keep saying LJN, but that's
I think
not
it
who
was
they were.
LJN at the time.
Was it?
Yes.
Was it the people that made
Mhm.
those games? Yeah. So like even though I had those games, Yeah, it was LJN. You were right. So even as I got those games, and those were more traditional wrestling games, I still gravitated back to arcade game. I don't know why, but I really just
I think because as a kid, you know, like that extra kind of oomph of it being different. You
Right,
know,
it's over
like
the
shooting
top.
fire. Yeah, over the top is the word.
right. But I would still just put people in the sharpshooter with Bret Hart anyway. So
Right.
it doesn't really matter. Or I
Yeah,
would do
we're,
like
we're
the-
big Bret Hart marks.
Yeah, this is
just,
this is a big Bret Hart podcast. But I did play a lot of Shawn. I played a lot as Lex Luger because that was like my WCW guy. So when Lex was in that game, I was like, oh shit, Lex Luger's in this game. I'm gonna play as Lex Luger.
yeah, Jeff's driving Lex Express for all those.
Yes,
wondering.
sir. I have my USA shirt on now. I'm gonna slam Yokozuna right here, pal.
He's going right on the Intrepid after this.
Nothing to say.
I remember Razor. I remember this game. I'm keeping track of the games when you guys are mentioning them, so I can look them up and see if they jog any memories. I remember the first one. I had that one actually.
Okay.
Now that I think about it. This one, Gabe and I used to borrow from the Pathmark.
The
Which-
vaunted Pathmark in Linden.
Every episode has to be mentioned,
That-
basically. But
I
this-
feel like they might have even had the machine for, or like,
they might have had actually. I think about it.
like the arcade cabinet.
yeah,
might
like
have
the
had
cabinet.
one.
Oh shit!
Yeah.
I have to be honest with you. I have never seen this game in an arcade cabinet.
I've seen
of
this.
the
One,
arcade
I have seen this one in an arcade cabinet, and I think Buffalo might be right. This might have been in the Pathmark,
Right.
Because there was a
Because it was like right next to Area 51.
Yeah, yeah,
The
that's it. I think this
and
might-
like
that
what
might have been
Tekken
it.
3.
And,
Of course.
Yeah, and I remember Razor Ramon's arm transforming into a blade.
Yes,
in this game.
yes, that was a big thing.
Yeah, and you were at Brett, The Undertaker, Shawn Michaels, Razor Ramon, Bam Bam Bigelow, Yokozuna, Doink the Clown, and Lex Luger.
Yep.
Yeah,
There they are.
This was
What a cast!
I remember playing this one. I very much so, and you said it was came out on PlayStation, Sega Saturn, and
Super Nintendo,
Super Nintendo,
and of course the arcade cabinet.
Yeah.
No, the other arcade game that I always see is Royal Rumble, which would have been the other game that I would have taken had you taken this.
Yeah, I was thinking about that, the one I picked, and the WrestleFest arcade cabinet.
Yeah.
It's always like a big one for me.
Is that the one that I'm thinking of? Or did they have Royal Rumble too?
I'm
I
not
don't
100% sure.
I think it might have been WrestleFest. Because it had I'm definitely thinking of WrestleFest too. So, yeah.
It had Demolition.
Yep.
It had, LOD was like the special boss if you
Yep.
did tag match.
I always remember Big Boss Man in this game for some reason. And I always remember Smash and Crush. Smash and Crush. It wasn't Smash and Axe. That's funny. That's interesting. And I always remember Sergeant Slaughter, like the little faces that would pop up in the corners there. I always remember them for some
I
reason.
still don't forgive Sergeant Slaughter for being, an Iraqi sympathizer, for all those wondering. Very anti-Sergeant Slaughter.
There you go. Even Commissioner Slaughter.
Yeah, don't like him either.
Yeah. No. Okay. So I was wrong. No, Royal Rumble was a Super Nintendo game. The Royal Rumble that I'm thinking of was WrestleFest. So WrestleFest would have been. It's basically both of our number twos. Interesting.
It's a good pick.
All right. Well, now you are back on the clock here. So what are you
Ooh.
thinking here? Are you gonna take the?
I'm gonna
in
go
order here or
I'm gonna go N64.
okay.
And, I've been waffling over this, but I think I've settled on it. I'm going to go WCW NWO Revenge.
Okay. I do like that pick. I think I love that game. I love the music. Obviously, it was the last WCW Aki game.
Right. I feel like with all four of those games, Revenge, World Tour, and then the two WWE games, WrestleMania 2000, No Mercy, you can't go wrong with those
Right.
four games because it's like, gameplay-wise, they're all the same,
Right.
more or less. But Revenge, I don't know. That one stuck out to me because I think that was the first one of the N64 ones I played.
Yeah, very well might have.
Right. And then, there was just such an expansive roster. I think there was, 50 or 60 guys.
Yeah.
It was crazy. Especially for that time, now games have that, if you don't have 50 guys, you're a bad game. But, at the time, you're 50 guys?
Right.
Oh, it's everybody.
Right, because you had 4 of just WCW. You had the 2 NWOs. You had the Ravens flock.
Then you had, those weird characters, they had, Aki Man, and then they had a Frankenstein guy,
Right.
and, monsters for whatever reason. I was like, what is this?
Allow me to flex my knowledge
Yeah,
here.
go ahead.
These are actually wrestlers from Virtual Pro Wrestling, the
Okay.
Japanese games. So you have guys like Giant Baba, you have Kenta Kobashi,
Right.
you have a couple of other Dr. Death, Steve Williams, and guys like that. So that's who those other wrestlers are. So obviously for licensing and copyright reasons, they couldn't bring them over. So they just made like fake guys, fake characters, but they all had the move sets of like actual Japanese wrestlers. So I thought that was really cool too, because you like you said, like, who the hell are these guys? You look them up and then it opens up an entirely new world of like Japanese wrestling to you, which is kind of where I started with Japanese wrestling, looking up Kenta Kobashi, and then it's like, this is a real guy and he's sick. Like, he's so cool. He's the guy that does the emerald flosion.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I love that move. I give it to all my creator wrestlers. That move's sick. And this is the guy that came up with it. So for me, I think that's like that's kind of where that came from for me. So I'm happy you talked about this, because I do love this game as well.
Do you have some favorite WCW guys? We've talked a lot of WWE here.
Of course. Well, Big Sexy was always my guy.
Yeah.
Big Sexy, Kevin Nash. Lex Luger, of course.
I feel like I've come to appreciate Kevin Nash more as I've gotten older. Like, as Diesel, I was like, oh, he's like cool, but I wasn't like super into him.
Right. But as Big Sexy, like, I don't know, for me, I thought he was just so cool. The Jackknife Powerbomb was always so cool for me. Love Lex Luger. I liked him as a kid, but I love him as an adult, and I've talked about him all the time. Scott Steiner, Big Papa Pump, is one of my all-time favorites as like an adult. I never really appreciated him, but yeah, like I love Scott Steiner. I love Scott Norton, especially in this game. I don't know why. I just think he's so cool, and he's another one of those Japanese guys that went over to Japan and was like a monster.
Yeah, I feel like he's a legitimate tough guy, but
is.
like in WCW, he's kind of just NWO fodder.
Right. No, and that sucks, because like he is really sick. I'm trying to think who else here. Raven, I always like playing as Raven because I thought the even flow animation was so cool in that game. DDP, of course. Bret Hart, of course. I'm going through the roster here. Glacier, I always thought was cool.
What about the Disco Inferno?
No, he was always the guy I'd kick the shit out of, for good reason. I loved all of like the cruiserweights, like Jericho. Obviously, we're big Jericho.
Yeah, Rey Mysterio.
Trips
Ultimo Dragon.
I love Ultimo Dragon. Love Hoovy, Ray, Psychosis. Psychosis has a bangerest theme music in WCW history. I will fight that.
I guess it's crazy. Like, if you could go back to those matches now, it's like, oh, like if I showed that match like to somebody who just started watching wrestling, you would think it's like the same era. Like, you could watch those cruiserweight matches and be like, oh, like, this is what we're watching now.
Yeah. And even like if you go back and watch ECW, like those guys were doing all of that in ECW even before they came to WCW, I mean.
Yeah.
So like it's really crazy how well that stuff stands the test of time. So I mean, here they are. Here's all of them. So Aki-Man was actually Mitsuharu Misawa. Shogun was Toshiaki Kawada. Executioner was Kenta Kobashi, yeah. Dr. Frank was Jumbo Suratu. Jekyll was Dr. Death. Maya Inca Boy, one of my all-time favorite random guys, was actually Akira Taue. Hawkana was Genshiro Tenryu. I'm trying to think of anything else. Brikowski was actually Mil Mascaras. That's Alberto Del Rio's dad, who we don't talk about here. And Hanzoman was Hayabusa, who was literally just a ninja. So they really didn't do much for him, but yeah. So there you go, kids. You can go ahead and look up all those old. Sorry, I'm trying to do something for my wife here, and record at the same time.
Dad, duties call.
Right, and yeah, I do love that game. I'm happy you brought it up because.
Well, was that going to be your N64 pick? Also?
No, it wasn't.
Ooh, spicy.
Like I said, we might have to. I might have to take it to win the social media graphic, even though I have been on record saying quite often that it's not my favorite N64 game. It's not. I do prefer another game over it. But
I think you got to go with your heart then.
I do have to go with my heart. I'll go N64 game with you, and I'm going to go WrestleMania 2000. I'm going to take WrestleMania 2000. So No Mercy is still on the board. So whoever wants to win the social media graphic can take it. But I'm going to go WrestleMania 2000. I think for me, the big thing that's the difference between the two, I mean, you figure the rosters are basically the same. The character customization is far better in No Mercy. But for me, having those customizable belts and being able to make like WWF titles, and obviously 10-year-old Jeff had a very vivid imagination. So there was like, I would take like the WWW title from World Tour.
Yeah.
And so I made like a WWW title. I had like the Undisputed title. I even made like after a while when I was like 15 or 16 still playing this game, and TNA had some guys. So I made like a TNA section and a TNA belt. So I had like Jarrett and D'Lo Brown in their own little like column there. So I just thought that customization option was so cool.
That was like the first game I remember, like the customization being like that, intense. Like, because I know a couple of games had creator wrestlers before that, but this was the first one where I was like, oh shit, there's like I could do like tons of stuff,
right?
Like, besides outfits, like you said, belts.
Besides just Attitude and Warzone, where you just make a really big fat guy. And give
him,
like,
just like, oh, are you fat guy or skinny guy?
Right, or and just give them all like Hurricane Ranas, or give the skinny guy jackknife power bombs. All of that. Like creating a character was like an investment of time,
right?
Because you had to go through every single move option. But I did appreciate that because it gave you that level of like you get kind of attached to your creative characters, even if you are making somebody stupid, or you're making like trying to make like Kevin Nash or make like Hulk Hogan or something like that in the games.
Well, that's what I liked about the games too, being developed by the same company all the way through, because it's like, oh, they had all the assets. It's like, oh, like they still had the Hogan leg drop and like, the different moves from the WCW guys, but they just called them like different things. Like, it wasn't jackknife, but it was something else.
Right. It was like Jack. Yeah, like
it was like butter knife,
right? Or it was like Jack knife instead of like two separate words instead of one word. But yeah, no, I did like that. The one thing I will say about these games that I don't like is that for moves like Hogan's leg drop and the people's elbow, basically it's just like a regular like move.
Yeah,
there's no like gravitas to it, like in the SmackDown games, which I guess we're gonna get on here in a minute. But where those moves actually did damage, like if you tried to finish somebody with Hogan's leg drop, they just kick out and one and be like, "What are you doing?"
Right.
So that's the one thing.
Well, it doesn't work for me, brother. You know?
Right. You got to take this power slam, dude.
Maybe you didn't rake him in the eyes first. You didn't do the 5 moves of doom.
Yeah, you didn't hit him and go, you. Yeah, so I mean, No Mercy is still on the table. I can't believe it. I am very happy that we got to touch on Revenge, though. I do love that game, and like I said, I love WrestleMania 2000. I also think the other thing that's cool is like the Road to WrestleMania mode, the career quote unquote mode in this is kind of cooler, where you're not just kind of like pigeonholed into one title pursuit. You can kind of go for anything, and it all kind of depends on how you do in the mode, whether you're fighting for the European title or you're fighting in a cage match for the world title. They put you in tag team,
they actually kind of put more story involved in it, like, because I don't think WCW Revenge had that, right? It was just, this is.
It was basically Mortal Kombat.
Go for the title, yeah.
Yeah, it was basically Mortal Kombat, where you just did like the ladder, and then you had Roddy Piper waiting for you at the end with the world title that he never won, which is the weirdest thing ever. But whatever.
And then Hogan steals it from you anyway.
Of course. I also did like about Revenge and then WrestleMania is like when you customized your characters and you watched like the intro movie, the costumes would be different.
Oh, yeah, they had, like, actual entrance attire.
Yeah, and then, like, if you put Hogan in, like, Sting's attire, when you see him in the movie, he's wearing the Sting attire or whatever else you put him in. So if you wanted to dress everybody up like Maya Inca Boy and let them and have an entire roster of Maya Inca Boys, anytime you watch that intro, they'd all look like Maya Inca Boy, which is so sick.
Fun fact, for all the Maya Inca Boy stands out there.
Me and who? All right, here you go. So you can definitely do like a heel Money in the Bank tactic and just take your wild card right now and just take No Mercy. But
no, I have a pick for a wild card, but it is not No Mercy.
Go for it, please.
Ooh, do the wild card now,
or do whatever you want.
I was gonna save, I think, the best for last because I think I'm gonna go off the radar there. But
all right. No. So
for the PS or for the PlayStation game, I'm gonna go with the obvious pick. Here Comes the Pain.
Shit. All right, I gotta find another one then. Okay, so go. Here Comes the Pain was my pick too. I thought it had like the best roster because that's like what post Invasion, right? So you have everybody.
Yeah. So that's when Brock Lesnar was coming up too. He's on the cover, so you have him. You have Goldberg.
We also denounced Brock Lesnar, anti-Brock Lesnar.
Oh yeah,
Watching Girls Pee podcast. Yeah, we're very much against that too.
What?
Oh yeah, so that woman,
Yeah, you know that guy.
the woman
Brock
that Vince
Lesnar.
McMahon was like pimping out. Brock Lesnar
Yeah,
apparently
he was grooming her for Brock Lesnar or
he was
something like
basically
that.
grooming her for Brock Lesnar, so he would come back to WWE. And one of the things that Brock wanted her to do, I think, was like to take a video of her pissing or something, right?
I didn't really go into the depth
There was
about
some sort of water sports involved with Brock and this woman. So we're just going to come out and say we're anti-water sports. We're anti-Brock Lesnar forcing women to participate in water sports, okay?
Cool.
Comments, Lakan?
Any comments?
I liked him as a fighter when he was actually fighting.
I also really loved him in like those UFC games. Like I loved Brock Lesnar.
He was a.
I mean, those could be your
he
wild
was a-
card. If
he
you
It
was-
really-
could. It
yeah,
technically
he was
could.
He was a D1 champ. He brought in like a very. I knew Brock Lesnar a little bit because of like, I just saw a massive motherfucker
Right.
when I kind of like. Because around the time he was coming up, 2000? This says 2003 when this game came out. Here
Yeah.
Comes the Pain. So
Sounds about right.
That's around the time that I stopped watching because I actually started getting into actual collegiate style wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I would still see this big dude. I heard,
But he was what, an NCAA
he
champion or
was
something?
NCAA Division I champion.
I believe he was a two-time champion. If
Oh,
I'm not
two-time.
mistaken. Two-time.
So the dude actually can wrestle. The dude can actually grapple. I mean, we saw him in the UFC. You know what I mean, doing stuff for a while. So I that's basically like my knowledge of this guy he was a massive motherfucker who threw the shit out of people when he was on in the ring and in the video games because he was basically like a pure power character essentially, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think he was the highest rated character in Here
was.
Comes the Pain.
Yep.
Yeah.
was
So
either
it's like,
him or
oh,
Kurt
he
Angle.
clotheslines like anybody. It's like, oh, automatic like
Right.
red. You're like, what?
Yeah.
It was always him and like Kurt Angle were always like the two highest rated guys. And then I kind of like realized like, oh yeah, Kurt Angle fucking rules. So that was kind of like my thing. Who was your guy in those games? Because I vividly remember who I always used in these games.
Well, so the cool thing I always liked about this game is like me and my brother were super into playing this, so we would draft wrestlers,
Right.
And like we had like a title sheet.
You
It's
did like GM mode before GM mode.
right. So it's just like, oh, this is his roster, this is my roster, and then we'd have like all these multi-man matches. So sometimes like
That's so sick.
if I saw my if we were doing like a 6-man match and one of my guys is climbing the ladder to grab the title, I just kind of stopped like my brother from interfering. So it's like, oh, my stable retains the title.
Hell yes. By the way, one of the things I've always wanted to do is do like a GM mode between us. I
Yeah.
think that would be a lot of fun, but that's neither here nor there. But so who were your guys? Do you remember?
So this is also the first game that I think that brought legends in, so I thought
Yes.
that was cool also. So I picked that 90s Undertaker a lot.
Uh-huh.
I also liked American Badass Undertaker.
Same. That was like the only guy I would play as in SmackDown games. Was like ABA Undertaker. For whatever reason, I just thought like his moves were so cool. He had like the big boot. He had like the regular power bomb, and then he would do the last ride, and I thought that was so sick.
Because I thought it would stick with his moveset. He would do the tombstone, and he also had the last ride.
Right.
And the choke slam. So
Right.
you're like, oh, you have these like 3 great power moves that
Right.
he's just, throwing out there.
And then he had the regular, like I said, like his regular move. He had like a power bomb in his regular arsenal.
Right.
He had that sick, like down X was like that big boot that would
Right.
just like kill everybody. He had like the flipping lariat that he would do. He had like the coolest moveset ever, and I loved it. I think as I got a little older too, like I would play a lot more Kurt Angle.
Yeah.
But what always pissed me off about Kurt Angle was that the Olympic Slam, you had to be behind the guy
oh yeah,
to do the
was
Olympic Slam. And I was like, that sucks. I want a front-facing move. And then, of course,
I
Stone
guess it
Cold.
was crazy. Like back in those days, like now, like to do the angle slam. Oh, like in the games, he just turns the guy.
Right,
Instead,
exactly.
it's like, oh, you gotta stun him, and then you gotta do that little walk around
Yep.
behind him, and it's like, oh, like you just
Or you
look like
have
an
to-
idiot.
Or you have to do that really dodgy like turn,
Right.
And then they wake up, and then you're like, shit, and then I don't have my super anymore, and
Right.
there we go. So, damn, here comes the pain. All right, I gotta pivot.
And what I also picked Goldberg a lot because he was another one of those
Hell
kind of
yeah.
like Brock Lesnar guys where it's like, oh, he clotheslines you, and then you're automatically
Hell yeah.
red arm.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm gonna go PlayStation 1 here.
Ooh.
I'm gonna go with the first like quote unquote next gen wrestling game that I had. Am I though? Hold on, I got to think about this because this is really tough. Actually,
Well, do you want to pick a different category, Bob?
I think I'm gonna go post 2010 actually, and I'm gonna pick WWE 12.
Ooh, okay.
So WWE 12 was sick. This was one of the last THQ wrestling games, right?
Was
So
this the one with Orton on the cover?
this was the one with Orton on the cover.
Okay.
And the one thing that I always remember about this, and actually a couple of YouTubers that I watch are replaying WWE 12 again, because the universe mode is absolutely insane. And some of you get some of the craziest cutscenes, guys jumping, popping out of like the crowd, and then they like punch. It's like reminds me of like the Pink Panther, where Kato just like pops out of like the armoire and just punches Clouseau in the face. It's like crazy shit like that. You have legends like appear out of nowhere. Actually, that's how you unlock Brock Lesnar in this game. Is like he'll just show up to fight one of your wrestlers, and if you're not paying attention and you just like skip it, that you miss your chance to unlock Brock Lesnar if you like just skip the story beat. And I just thought it was so crazy about how all of that like played out. And I'm a big universe guy. Like I'm a big universe mode guy. That's usually the mode that I consume the most in these games. So like a lot of the showcases and stuff like that weren't really up my alley. But I did dabble in all of that. But for me, it was all about the universe mode. And for me, like, this game delivered the best universe mode experience. So that's kind of why I wanted to go with it.
Because we're big, like, in Madden franchise
Right.
guys, you
Yep.
know. You could miss me with all that Ultimate Team garbage.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I like the Ultimate Team when I have to play as, like, the 60 overall guys
Right.
and all of that. Like, for me, that's the fun challenge.
Well, you're playing as a 60-year-old, overall guys to have fun, and then, like, this kid who spent, like, $300 to make his guys all 99 you're playing against, and you're like, well.
Well, crap. Well, that's why you only play the computer.
Right.
So that was kind of like my experience with 12. I know I put a lot of time into 12. I know I put a lot of time into 14, but for me, just like remembering back, like 14, 2K14, that was like the first 2K game, and I did remember that fondly, but for me, like the pre-2K games were just so much better, and THQ I always kind of felt like understood wrestling.
Yeah.
Even if Ukes was the one like developing the game, I always kind of just trusted a game with like a THQ logo on it. So that's kind of why I wanted to go with 12 here.
Well, funny you mentioned 14 because that's where I was going to go. I was going to pick 14.
I did love 14 too.
Mostly because, like, I feel like this is when they're really like, oh, we have all these legends in our arsenal.
Yep.
This is where we're going to start pumping them out. So it's like, oh, you had like 2 or 3 Kevin Nashes. You had NWO and Diesel, and then Ultimate Warrior was the pre-order guy, and like loved the Ultimate Warrior as a kid. So I'm like, oh, he's back with WWE. I could not believe that. Blew my mind. But and you had like all the Hogans
Yep.
and the Macho Man.
Yep.
So this is when they were really starting to pump out the legends. I was like, okay, I'm back in.
Right, exactly. I want to play as all of these guys. I don't want to play as fucking Big Cass or whatever.
Right.
Or
So then, like, then in your universe, it's like, oh, like Hogan and the Warriors on the undercard with like, and then you have like, oh, Undertaker there and Shawn Michaels. So it's like, oh, you really have this loaded roster of guys. So you're not playing as like, Heath Slater or something. Sorry for all the Heath Slater lovers out there, but
listen, Heath Slater is a hardworking man. He's fighting for his kids. Yeah, here I am. I'm looking at this roster too. This is a pretty stacked roster. Big John Studd, Bruno. This was the big deal when Bruno came back to WWF.
Right, because Bruno and Warrior were like a year apart. This is when they were
Yep.
really starting to bring everybody back.
Right. This is when Triple H kind of puts
Was
out
mending
that olive
fences,
branch.
yeah.
Yep, puts out that olive branch and all of that. Yep, I do remember this roster. I think this is one of the inside jokes in our friend group here is that I had a massive feud between Dolph Ziggler and Ryback in one of my universe modes for like 6 months. I'm pretty sure this is the game that happened in, where
So who was going over?
Oh, they were fighting for that title, man.
Oh yeah,
They were going back and forth. Dolph Ziggler
switching it back and forth.
Dolph Ziggler had that title for a while. Ryback had that title for a while. That was it was intense stuff, man. That was my Raw feud, I think. I think like my SmackDown, because obviously you had like the ability to customize the rosters and go back to the brand split. I think by now the brand split's gone in this game, right?
I think you were allowed to do that though.
Right.
You could have like
No. That's what I did, and so I know like Christian basically had like SmackDown on lock because that is my guy. Like obviously I really always loved Christian, and when he went to TNA and then he came back.
What's your favorite version of Christian? Brood Christian? Do you like?
Oh no, it would be like the Peeps,
Like
or
the
like
Captain
the Christian
Charisma?
Coalition, yeah. The Christian Coalition and the Problem Solver Tyson Tomko and all of that, like the TNA era. And then I think now he's doing his best work. Like I think this like patriarch Christian Cage with the turtleneck and everything. I think this is some of his best work. I mean, he's the only guy to get like legitimate heat in this business these days, man. It's crazy.
I'm happy for him too because it looked like he was done with wrestling.
Right.
Like if I told you 10 years ago Christian's gonna be back and in a main event like Spotlight, no one would have believed me.
Right, it'd be like his head isn't mush.
Yeah,
this poor guy, but no, he fought back. That's the other cool thing too, with like how medicine has advanced. Like you thought Edge was gone,
right?
Like if Edge took a bump. Remember, like when Edge came back, I forget who he was. Like who I think it was John Cena and Seth Rollins, right? And they were gonna have Seth give Edge the stomp, and it was like, no, he can't do that, or he's gonna die.
Right.
So.
Yeah, because they couldn't even let like Edge take any bumps. It's
Right.
just like, and then he just kind of had to keep walking away from these confrontations he would get into.
Right, and then now it's like he's jumping through tables, he's jumping up the top rope, he's spearing people, he's doing all sorts of crazy shit, and like he's back, and it's so sick to see.
Well, and I think that's why like we love wrestling because, in baseball you can't see Babe Ruth versus like you can't have these dream scenarios.
Right.
Like in wrestling, like, The Rock is back after 20 years.
Right.
And it's like, we've seen Hogan wrestling for like 50 years, wrestling like everybody. So it's like we've gotten to see these crazy matches like in actual,
Yeah. And that's like and that's the cool thing about having like different companies too. Like when it was just WWF and the way that WWF and WWE kind of operate, you weren't getting these matches. But think about like what Edge is doing now as Adam Copeland in AEW. He just wrestled Minoru Suzuki, who's like one of like the greatest Japanese wrestlers of all time. A match that you would never think is possible, but it happened.
Right, and Bryan Danielson's wrestling everybody.
Right,
he's
Brian
wrestling in
Danielson
Japan and
just wants
England
to wrestle every Japanese wrestler ever. And then you get like these guys like Eddie Kingston who come out of nowhere. And like you said, I think that's what makes wrestling great. It's like you take all these underdog guys that would never have fit in. Like, could you see Sid Vicious doing anything other than wrestling? Can you see like?
I mean, he tried to. He loved his softball.
Okay, outside of being a professional men's softball player, could you see like Sid Vicious or The Undertaker doing anything else but pro wrestling? No. And it gives these guys who basically would have like nothing going on, and it gives them a platform, and it gives them a career, and they're beloved.
Well, and it's crazy
so
the
cool.
crossover that I guess we've seen throughout wrestling. It's just like, regular athletes love wrestling.
Right.
Like, Ray Lewis, like,
Right.
half his speeches are basically like wrestling promos.
Exactly. I always remember one of the Eagles, Vinnie Curry. Used to play for the Jets, played for the Eagles, big wrestling fan. Would be like front row every Philly wrestling event. He'd be front row, loved it. And now you see like the crossover appeal with like the belt is everywhere, the WWE Championship.
Right. Gronk was wrestling like a couple of years
Yeah,
ago.
exactly. And then the other way around too. Now John Cena's in every fucking movie.
Yeah.
Batista's in every action movie. The Rock is in every shitty action movie that you can think of. Even Stone Cold had a few years, like he was in the Longest Yard and things like that. And even Goldberg was in that too.
Right.
So you're seeing like the crossover appeal. Even going the other way too, where you have like these wrestling personalities going into other things, and I think that's sick too, because it gives these people another avenue. Like even Edge, when Edge got hurt, he started acting, and then after a while, like you heal. Now look, he's back.
And like what, Logan Paul, Bad Bunny, like, and these guys are actually like good wrestlers. It's amazing.
Bad Bunny rules. Like I fucking love Bad Bunny. He's
like,
so
it's
good.
crazy how good he.
Right.
I mean, I'm going off on a tangent, but I think his entrance and his pop that he got at that Puerto Rican, I think was Backlash, the pay-per-view.
Yep.
I would put it up there with anybody's.
Yeah.
It might be top 5 like entrances of all time, just for the crowd reaction, the pop. Like,
Yeah.
Like, I was watching it on my phone and I was getting like chills.
Right.
Like I couldn't imagine being in that arena.
Right. No, I dig it for sure. So that's a roundabout way to say I'm taking WWE 12 and you're taking WWE 2K14. So now I'm back on the clock, and shit. Now I'm looking at this PlayStation game, and I have a lot of like PlayStation games that I'm thinking about because obviously I had a lot of games on PlayStation 1, but I don't know if I want to take them. So I was thinking like WCW versus the World, which had like not just WCW wrestlers, but it had a lot of Japanese wrestlers too.
I remember playing what WCW was it WCW Nitro where
Nitro
like
and Thunder. Yep.
what you went on the character and then
they would talk to you.
Yeah, they would
right.
talk to you. I thought that was like fun.
Right, but the games suck.
The games are awful. That's why I only remember the promo.
Right, exactly, and that's kind of like the thing. That's where I'm stuck. You know.
But isn't that like WCW in a nutshell? Like the stories were kind of fun, but then when you got to the matches, they were insane.
Right, because it would just be like either like 3-minute shit shows, or it would be like a 15-minute match, and it would just end fugazi, and you wouldn't get any resolution. Right, exactly. And then, the tape machines are rolling. We'll see you next time. I'm Tony Schiavone. And yeah, so that's kind of how it would end. So it would always kind of end with like a fizzle and a fart, right? So I think I have an idea of where I want to go with my PlayStation game here, because this is another one.
I mean, you could go wild card if you'd like.
No, I think we should save the wild card for the end.
Okay.
And so I kind of know which one I want to go with here. I just have to make sure I get the right year, because I had this game on PSP, and I played the ever-living shit out of this game. I'm going SmackDown versus Raw 2006.
Is that the one with Batista and Cena on the cover?
Yep, it's one with Batista and Cena on the cover. I must have played 800 Elimination Chamber matches in this game. And because, like, you know, by then I'm still at home, right? I'm still like...
2006 we're in high school.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm 16, so I'm not driving. So I'm still, like, in the passenger seat going places. So I need something to keep myself occupied. So I have the PSP. I'm playing all these Elimination Chambers. I don't think we had like a universe mode. I think they had GM mode, but we back then could never figure out how to beat the computer in the GM modes, so I never played it.
So I had that for PlayStation. What was it? PS2.
Yeah, it would be PS2.
There was like some kind of connectivity between that, right?
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, because I didn't have the PSP version.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, for whatever reason, I got it on PSP, and then that's just kind of like how I played it. That's right. So they had like the story mode. So like this is this the game where Teddy Long gets hit by the car? No, that's not it. No, this has to no. Hold on. No, this is something else.
I remember the story modes are kind of wacky.
Yeah.
Like because you could pick anybody, but it was all like a cookie cutter story mode,
right.
So it's like, you know, the Undertaker's like seducing the Divas, and you're like, why? Like,
no.
You know, you're like, what?
So Teddy Long gets hit by the car in 07, not 06. I don't remember what story.
He's changing his pick to where Teddy Long gets hit by the car.
No. I'm gonna keep 06 here, because this is the one that I played a lot. But
he was about to put you in a tag team match.
play ya. But no, so like this is the one that I played the most of, and this is the one that I obviously remember the most, even though I don't really remember it a lot, because all I can remember is just playing in Elimination Chambers all the time, which is funny to me. But
I mean, those are always like one of the funnest match types. You know, you had the 6 people.
Yeah, like the Hell in the Cells, the Armageddon Hell in a Cell,
right.
The Elimination Chambers, and all of that. So I'm gonna go with SmackDown versus Raw 2006. What are you thinking here? What do you have left? You have what do you have
we
left?
both just have the wild card.
Okay, so what's your wild card?
Okay, so I think I'm going to go off the beaten path here. I'm going to pick a PlayStation game, but non-WWE related, but wrestling related.
Okay.
I'm going to pick Rumble Roses.
No shit.
For the PlayStation 2.
No shit. Okay, tell me how you know Rumble Roses and how you got into this game.
One day my brother just brought it home, you know, and he was like, "Oh, I heard this is a really good wrestling game. You know, it's made by what? THQ, right?"
I think so.
Developer was Yuke's, and publisher was Konami.
Oh shit!
Yeah,
okay, so Yuke's made this game. Yeah, the guys
so it
that
had
made
like the same exact wrestling engine that all the wrestling games had, and you know, like, you know, on the outside looking in, it's just like, oh, it's fan service.
Right.
But then like when you're actually playing it, you're like, oh, this is a really good wrestling game. Like,
that's
you know,
so sick.
And they had like all the moves, but then like since it was like more fantasy, they were doing some like crazy moves that like, you know, you wouldn't see actual wrestlers doing. So you're like, oh man, look at that like spinning like 360 pile driver. Like,
no
I don't
shit.
know where.
Zangief?
Yeah. And like all the characters were you know, like unique, so they weren't actual wrestlers or anything like that, but they all had like stories for each character, and there was like a story mode for each character.
Right.
And then, you know, the fan servicey part, you could dress them up, and
of
like,
course,
you know,
the
like
best.
Just look at the cleavage and stuff like that.
Nice,
you know?
very cool.
So as you
Wow.
know, a teenage boy, you're like, whoa,
Wow, this rules.
Yeah. And that was like around the same time DOA was doing their crazy thing.
Right,
So
doing
it's just
their
like
jiggle
everybody
physics
was
and all
trying
that.
to get in on like the sex appeal.
The jiggle physics and all that.
Exactly.
Yeah. Gotcha. Wow. I didn't expect that.
But in terms of wrestling games, it was actually like a really fun wrestling game.
Wow. I never would have thought. Never would have thought here. For me, I am also going with that PS2 era game. I'm going Def Jam Fight for New York. I
okay.
love these games. I kind of was tossing back between Vendetta and Fight for New York because Vendetta kind of felt more like a wrestling game.
Vendetta felt like the N64 games.
Right, it did. Fight for New York kind of felt like the next evolution of that, where you weren't just wrestlers, you had like martial artists, you had like street fighters and all of that. So the grappling mechanics and the reversal mechanics were still there. It had sort of like that fleshed out combo system though, where you could do like punches and you could like grab as part of the combo and like throw them into the crowd, and then they would throw them back, and you could like Samoan drop them after that. They had like the weapons. They still had the charisma system, right, where you would hit the taunt when the bar was flashing, and you could do your finisher and all of that. Played the shit out of that game. Like I have a lot of hours into that.
I had both of them, but I remember playing Vendetta more.
Yeah, I remember playing Vendetta quite a bit. I had Vendetta on GameCube, and then,
I also had Vendetta on GameCube.
And then I had Fight for New York on the Xbox, the original Xbox.
Okay.
I don't know why I made the switch, but I just ended up doing it. I think because as time went on, the original Xbox, between Halo and Capcom versus SNK 2 and the Madden games, like eventually an NBA 2K, that eventually just became like my main system.
It was also the more powerful system. The load times are better. All the hardware stuff of it.
Everything I was thinking about as a 13-year-old or whatever it was. But I love that game so much, and for me, like that's just that's where I would have to go.
Ooh, who were you picking in Def Jam? I remember picking DMX a lot in Vendetta.
I always pick DMX in Vendetta, and that other guy 9 with like the red bandana. That was like my other guy in that game. In Fight for New York, I always played as like my creative character a lot. But if I had to pick like other people, it would be like Busta Rhymes, Memphis Bleak, DMX. I picked a lot of
Ghostface
Killa
was in
with
that, right?
the big with the big eagle on his arm. So I did.
Method Man I think was in.
Yeah,
those
Meth
games.
and Redman were in there. Snoop Dogg was like the final boss. He was Crow. I did remember picking D-Mob a lot because D-Mob was like the final boss of Vendetta.
Right.
So like him as a playable character, kind of like in that Bison role where like in Street Fighter 4 where he's not the final boss, but he's the final boss.
Yeah.
Like I thought that was pretty sick.
Because I think they got Snoop for Fight for New York, right?
Yeah.
Like he wasn't in the first one.
No, that's right. So it was It's
Snoop. Pretty crazy, like the people they got for those games, though.
Right, I know.
Like all those, artists we talked about,
and even like the love interest. You had like Kimora Lee Simmons, you had Carmen Electra, Little Kim.
Yeah,
like,
they actually got like named people instead of just here's random.
Here's Bimbo A and Bimbo B.
Exactly.
Whatever, fuck you. Just they're objects. No, they actually had like legitimately female characters with like intimate storylines. Like that was pretty cool. I think about it. I still want to play. Like I want to play it again.
I think that's one of those games. Also, people are like clamoring for. Like, oh, how come they didn't make another like Def Jam game?
Right. Well, they did. They made Icon and it sucked.
Oh,
that was the problem. So I think you're seeing that a lot though now. Like I know there was like a clamoring a few years ago where people wanted a new Def Jam game. I think the big thing is you don't have like those super record labels anymore because of how the music industry is changed.
Yeah, the licensing probably is
right.
like
licensing's probably a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
People aren't all on one musical entity anymore. You know, you're split up, and a lot of them probably don't even have major record deals anymore. A lot of them are independent guys. Like, who are you going to put?
Well, do you think that'd be easier to get people if they're independent? Because you could go to, or do you think like it's a money thing where it's like, oh, well, I want $1 million. Oh, well, he's getting $1 million. I want $2 million. Kind of deal.
Probably. Well, especially now these days, probably you're getting a lot of that where ego is going to be at play. And then
it's just like regular wrestling.
Right. Exactly. And then it's probably going to be like, well, no, I don't want to be in the game if I can lose or something like that.
Right.
Like you're going to get.
So they're all Hulk Hogan.
Right. Like I could just imagine Kanye West being like that, being like,
Right.
well, I don't want to be able to lose. I want to be like this omnipotent character and all of that, or something crazy like that. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but
I think it would be crazy because it's been 15, 20 years since the Def Jam games. Like there's been so many new artists. Like who would you put in that game? And now there's more like female like
representation, right?
Yeah,
so you
so
could
it's like-
have like Megan the. Would you have Megan the Stallion, one of like the biggest recording artists on the planet, relegated to like a girlfriend role, or would she be like a legitimate playable character in this game? She'd have to be.
right, like it's the dream matches. You got to do them
Right,
all.
exactly. You have to have
Like in the Cardi B's and
you have to have forgive me, but you have to have like Megan the Stallion versus Tory Lanez, settle it in the ring.
or on the streets.
Yeah,
As a heads up, I would play the fuck out of Megan Thee Stallion.
she'd be so
I
sick.
would love to play as Megan Thee
Well,
Stallion.
did you play the Def Jam games? You're a big music guy.
Yeah, I played I played Vendetta and I played a little bit of Icon. Vendetta, I spent a lot of time in. I played as Tank because he was the big Asian dude.
Nice.
Representation.
Yeah, exactly. It's the closest I can get to a Filipino guy
In a hip hop game, yeah.
Actually, there was one thing it made me think of actually earlier when I was like thinking about the casting you were talking about earlier for the games. I believe it was what game was it? You mentioned earlier it was the first game that also had I think we had Batista on the cover.
SCR-06.
Yeah, so I think that was one of the ones that I dipped into a little bit when
Okay.
I realized a lot of our friend group, because we were in high school at that time, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of our friend group had like either like gotten back into wrestling or were like, oh, people are talking about this again a little
Yeah.
bit. Okay, we can talk about it now without being like ridiculed for it back in high school.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, oh, sweet. Like someone mentioned to me, like, hey, there's a Filipino guy who's
Yeah.
really big now in the WWE. I'm like, what? Usually it's always like a Japanese dude or a Samoan dude,
Right.
dressed up as an Asian dude, basically.
Right.
And then Filipino.
Yeah,
guys like, oh,
stereotypical.
sweet, there we go. My guy, he's my man.
And then you look at Batista and it's like, wait a second.
I'm not built like him.
Wait a
and also,
second.
he doesn't.
Now, for all you listeners out there, Lakan looks like Batista's twin brother.
yeah. I can't
So if
tell
you
them apart.
if you see him out there, you're like, oh shit, it's Lakan.
There is Dave Batista.
But yeah, Def Jam Fight for New York. I played the hell out of that game. The soundtrack was super.
I was gonna
dope.
say, yeah, the soundtrack for both of those games
Yeah,
were sick
like
too.
because obviously they're already contracting with the hip hop artists. Def Jam, Def Jam, the entirety of itself, obviously. Yeah, like I remember, like every time I saw Scarface on there or Ludacris showed up, or Joe Budden was in that game. as
Yep,
well,
yep.
too.
Yep, I do remember Joe Budden being in there.
I remember Flavor
Fire.
Flav was in there, wasn't he?
Favorite Flav was in that
There you
game.
go, yeah.
I remember when Fire used to come on. That was like my shit.
Oh
I
my
loved
God.
the Joe Budden's
I
first
I
album.
popped super hard for when I saw a lot of these music artists showing up in the
Yeah.
in the line.
Well, I think you could do like a whole separate. We could do a whole separate episode on people we'd want in now. Like, how
Right.
many would you bring back?
Right. How
and-
many could you bring back?
Right.
Right.
Like, oh, there's artists that passed away. Would you have those guys in there?
Right.
Like,
I know.
And the thing is, you guys also mentioned about like the crossover appeal, especially nowadays, right? It obviously showed up throughout the years of the WWE, WWF, and WCW, right? But I mean, obviously back then we had Tyson show up, during like
Yeah.
WrestleMania stuff. Like even now, and again now, Bad Bunny, Logan, right, is showing up in there. And
Dennis
then
Rodman,
Dennis
Jay
Rodman.
Leno, like
and more,
Karl Malone,
more
yeah.
and more fans, now as you said before, or participants of like other professionals in other sports are showing up at events, and obviously the other way around as well too. Showing out for the support that they're receiving from their fans, essentially from other sports.
I'd also like to say for the record that we are anti Karl Malone knocking up a teenager and abandoning her child. Fuck Karl Malone.
Yeah, forgot about that.
Okay,
Yeah, Karl Malone.
who's keeping the list of the denouncings we've done on this episode?
Yep. So it's just Vince McMahon, Brock Lesnar, and Karl Malone. That's all. Fuck them.
Hopefully we haven't missed.
Well,
anybody
I
else.
don't know. We could still keep going.
I can give you a microphone and less sleep than a human should have.
Start
And
calling out everybody. Exactly.
yeah, and nobody's safe.
Ooh, well, you're the big Philly guy. Who's showing up at WrestleMania this year in Philly?
Oh, I am sure Jason Kelsey is going to be there with probably some teammates. Fletcher Cox will probably be there. I think he's a big wrestling guy. Lane Johnson, I'm sure, will be there. If I know WWE, they're going to pay Jason Kelsey whatever it takes to be there shirtless drinking.
Well, I think Joel Embiid will show up himself.
I'm sure.
He loves WWE
Yep.
and DX and all that
I'm
stuff.
sure. I'm trying to think who else. I'm sure you can get a flyer or two. I'm sure you can get a member of the union. Probably Bryce Harper. I'm sure they'll want there, something like that. Just stick them all together in the front row and have some fun.
Ooh, well, George Kittle, he's a big wrestling guy. Do you have George
I
Kittle
hope-
versus Jason Kelsey?
I hope Jason Kelsey hits him with the barbed wire bat and throws him into the death match barbed wire and blows him up.
Oh, wow.
There it is.
Are you
Adam
denouncing George
Willis.
Kittle? Or
No, he's fine. Everybody else on the
you
Niners.
just want him dead?
No, I don't want him dead. I just want him
Maimed.
to look like Terry Funk at the end of King of the Death Match 9 or whatever it was. So, what do we miss? What are some games that obviously I think the biggest one that I am shocked is still there is No Mercy. Nobody took the social media graphic win. Does that exist kind of in rare air of its own sort of space, right? Is it kind of like alone at like the top, you think, or not really?
Okay, I guess I got a hot take. Like I said, all those games were developed, by the same
By
companies.
Aki and published by
Right.
THQ, right?
So it's like, oh, it was the final one. So of course it was going to be the most polished and stuff. But
Right.
is No Mercy a little overrated?
Whoa. Yes, but we're here to win social media. We're not here to have...
Okay, scratch that from the record. We love No Mercy.
No,
but seriously, like, I love No Mercy. I
Right.
played it a ton as a kid, like the roster was great, it had like all those Attitude Era guys that you love, from D-Load and Val Venus to The Rock and Austin.
Right.
But, if you go back and play it now, it feels very clunky.
All those games do. I mean,
Right.
none of them feel really smooth. I think actually the best versions of those games are the Def Jam games.
Yeah.
Because I think they took that engine and polished it to a point where, they brought it into like the next generation of consoles. And to me, those games feel better than the 4 N64 games ever felt. But
Well, and that's why I think, like, I picked Rumble Roses because I'm like, oh, this does feel a lot more polished. It's
Right.
like a wrestling game, like you don't feel like you're this blocky movement kind of thing.
right, and then you have to sit there and charge up your
Yeah,
grapple.
charge up your grapple.
Right, because by the time like any of that would happen in a real wrestling match, you'd already be on the floor
Yeah.
when you're trying to like grapple.
You would
your
have gotten
opponent.
Sweet Chin Music right in the face.
Right. Or I would have just hit L1 and
Yeah.
hit you with my finisher in one of the SmackDown games. So I do think I think it's kind of like properly rated. I think it's kind of like, yeah, it's the last of this great era of games. We never got like another one of those. We never got like another WCW one. We got stuck with the EA games. We got stuck with Mayhem, where they all have like the little arms that are like reverse bow armed for some reason, and those kind of sucked.
The WCW games really fell off after Revenge, though.
Yeah.
Like, what, Thunder was terrible. And
Right,
like,
Nitro and
almost-
Thunder were really bad. They just,
Yeah.
like we talked about, they had those fun little promos. The Mayhem and Backstage Assault were so bad, they're good kind of games. I think they were just not really fun. I have Mayhem. I still have Mayhem at my parents' house. But, like, I'm not going to pop that in over, WrestleMania 2000 or even Revenge at this point.
I think it is good to revere those games, but it's kind of like how I feel about GoldenEye. If I go back to GoldenEye is very, very rough to play. It's
Yeah,
better,
no.
Left in the hollowed ground.
Yeah, let it stay in gaming heaven.
Yeah.
And let's just go back and play games that we'd actually like want to play.
Right.
The one that I was missing was kind of like the sequel to WrestleMania the arcade game, In Your House, which was on the PlayStation. It was
Right.
like a sequel to WrestleMania the arcade game. So you had different characters. Like you had when Warrior came back.
Warrior came back.
You
I
had
think you had Hunter's Helmsley.
Hunter Hearst Helmsley, Shawn Michaels still, Bret Hart was still there, Owen Hart was there, the King of Hearts,
Right.
Owen Hart. You had Undertaker. You had a few other guys.
I don't know why
Ahmed
that
Johnson,
one.
I think, was
Because I
in that.
remember having both of them, but that one I felt like they took stuff out of. I don't remember specifically what, but I don't remember playing In Your House as much as WrestleMania the arcade game.
I
for whatever
don't
reason.
think it was as goofy and over the top. I think they did kind of limit things a little bit for whatever reason. I don't know why, but the other thing that they did add though was they had like fatalities. So like Shawn Michaels would drop like the Heartbreak Hotel on
Yeah.
people, and Undertaker would literally like bury people alive. You had like Bulldog, Goldust, Ahmed Johnson, the whatchamacallit, the commentary had Mr. Perfect on it. I
Right.
thought that was pretty cool because by then Mr. Perfect was in, like when I really got to start playing it, Mr. Perfect was already in WCW. He was Kurt Hennig. So I was like, whoa, this is crazy. Like this guy's talking a WWF game, but he's in WCW. So that was one that I was like, I can't draft this, but I do want to mention it. Obviously the first era of SmackDown games, 1 and 2, and then like Shut Your Mouth and Know Your Role was like the other
Yeah.
one. Trying to think what else.
Well, then they start switching to SmackDown vs. Raw after
Right,
Here
right,
Comes
right.
the Pain.
Yeah, so then you had all like the other SVR games.
Another wild card, Fire Pro Wrestling.
Yeah, all the
I
Fire
I thought
Pros.
you were gonna go there.
No, I do love Fire Pro. I think, again, like we talked about with Nitro and with Thunder, like all the other stuff is really sick, but like the actual gameplay kind of gets a little boring after. Not boring, but like it does get a little repetitive, and you can't really do a lot of the things that you want to do in that game very easily. At least as far as I could do it. Maybe I'm just bad at it, but
those like had like major crossovers, right? Like you could pick the WWE guys, or some of them had like all the Japanese like companies and stuff like that.
But that's the thing. Like the full customization suite is insane in those games, and you can create your own customization assets. So you can make whoever you want in those games. So it's pretty sick. The other one that I do want to shout out is WWE All Stars, which is like a super duper over the top game that came out on PS3 and 360. It featured a lot of like retro wrestlers and a lot of like the current crop at the time. I think,
and it was like the comparison between the two. I remember I think it was like the Celtic Warrior versus the Ultimate Warrior,
right?
Thing.
And then you had like Andre and the Big Show. You had like Cena and Hogan were like opposites or whatever,
right?
Really enjoyed that. Really enjoyed that, like that career mode and that campaign mode. I thought that was a lot of fun. So I do want to shout that out. And I'm trying to think of some other wrestling games that I wanted to shout out. Oh, the Ultimate Muscle game, of course.
The Ultimate Muscle game is great. That was another game. I think that was also Yuke's or Aki.
I'm pretty sure, yeah. I think it was Aki. But I did want to shout that out. I love Ultimate Muscle. I love Kaneko Man. Definitely one of my favorites.
I remember we had like the little rubber, like the small like the pink toys.
Man,
yeah. And like I never knew what it was, and then like I played that game and I was like, oh shit, what is this? And then I got in like a Kaneko Man kick.
Yeah. I remember it being Ultimate Muscle on like Fox Kids or
right,
whatever it was.
That's
like,
when I started. I was like, oh shit, it's right here.
Right, that guy's there. Oh shit.
Yeah.
So that's like I always loved like the Muscle Buster and the Muscle Millennium and stuff like that.
Did you always pick Kid Muscle?
Of course.
Or,
I always, him and Kevin Nash. I mean Kevin Mask.
I was a big Kevin Mask guy.
big Kevin Mask guy. But I always picked like either Kid Muscle
or Bone
like,
Cold
or like Kaneko Man or the guy that was supposed to be who's the guy with the mullet? His best buddy. I forget his name.
Oh,
he was
Terry
Hair or something like that.
Terry Man or something.
Yeah, Terry Kaneko Man. Let's see here. Terry Man. Yeah, Terry the Kid. He was supposed to be like. God,
he was his sidekick, right?
No, yeah, he was a sidekick, but I'm trying to think of who he was like what wrestler he was based off, like what real wrestler he was based off.
He was from Texas, I believe, and
who knows? He's probably Dusty Rhodes or whatever. But yeah, no, I do remember a lot of those guys, and
I thought that game was cool because it had like those tag team finishers.
Yeah, yep. Oh, God, man, now I want. If that wasn't like $400, I'd go find that and play it.
I have that at home.
I know. Yeah, you splurged.
That's a good one.
What else? Anything else you're missing?
The wrestling. Do you guys remember the Simpsons wrestling game?
Yes, I remember Simpsons
wrestling. I spent
wrestling.
a lot of time playing that one. That was like a very like random one that I
PS1. I remember Simpsons wrestling.
That was. I think because again it's like I just remember it being like semi-cel shaded.
Yep.
Like kind of the way they designed it, so it's, it doesn't have the typical Western cartoon aesthetic.
Yeah.
But I remember like just one of those things like I found it randomly when it was especially like once we had moved past the PS1.
Yeah.
It was like $5 in like a bin, and I was like, I'm absolutely gonna play this because I remember the fuck out of this game.
As like kids, it's like we were kind of playing anything, but if you go back to it now, you're like, oh, that game was like very clunky, very like
yeah, absolutely. It was not a good game,
right?
When I look back at it now, but like. I mean, why wouldn't I want to see Homer fighting like Willie the Groundskeeper? You know what I mean? Like it would be amazing.
Oh, are you saying that's your dream matchup?
That's the dream matchup.
Book it.
Well, they kind of fought when Homer was stealing the grease and Willie and him were grappling.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, the
grease me up, woman.
I liked just pro wrestling on the Nintendo. Starman. Starman we saw wrestle in real life, at one of our local wrestling shows.
Yeah, Starman is a big meme in the friend group here. Oh, what else? Those LJN games I do from the Super Nintendo era. I do want to shout those out. Those were fun. Yeah. I remember just like constantly leg dropping somebody. I think it might have been Warrior.
No.
I don't know why, but like the noises, like the sound effects in those games were always so funny, and
those games hurt your fingers because it's like, oh, you grappled, and then it's like, oh, you got to tap A like real fast to win the grapple, and then it's like,
oh shit, were those the games where it was like the grappling system would pop up and it was like it would be
Yeah, it was like
red.
a kind of like a thought bubble, and it's like, oh,
Yup.
it's blue or red. I think
Red.
that was what WWE Raw or WWF Raw at the time and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah, that is the game. Okay, I thought
We
it
had that
was
for the
crazy.
Game Gear back.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's the thing too. We were both Nintendo kids, so like if there were like Genesis games or Genesis exclusive games, we missed them.
Well, I think I don't remember the wrestling game. It might have been Royal Rumble, but there was a Genesis version, and then there was a Super
SNES
Nintendo.
version?
Yeah, but like the Genesis version had Hulk Hogan and Papa Shango.
What? And then the other one didn't have Hulk
Yeah,
Hogan.
and then the other one had like it might have been Flair and somebody else, but
What? What a ripoff.
Yeah, but at the time you're like, Flair was the WCW guy. So if you're watching WWF stuff, you're like, I don't have Hogan.
Right, exactly.
You're like, huh?
That's crazy.
So the SNES version had Ric Flair, Mr. Perfect, Ted
DiBiase.
DiBiase,
That's the $1 Million Man to you and me.
Yokozuna, and Tatanka. The
Okay.
Genesis version had Hulk Hogan, IRS,
Holy shit.
Jim Duggan, Rick Martel, and Papa Shango. Yeah.
Holy shit.
Ooh.
A game didn't have Hulk Hogan in it.
Ooh, which 5 are you picking though?
Oh, I mean, I'm going with Hogan and IRS, of course.
Are you a big Irwin R. Shyster?
Yeah, he
guy?
carried me in WWE Supercard for an entire season. Hell yeah.
Really? He was like your top guy?
Yes. I got like the super rare, like exclusive IRS card that had like the specific like branding to it, and it like carried me throughout an entire season of that
You
game.
had like the 1-of-1 IRS card.
Just about. I mean, it was like a special edition card.
Wow.
And yeah, so I was like, hell yeah, IRS. I'm an IRS stan.
Wow. So Jeff's top of card has Ryback, IRS, and
Hell yeah.
Dolph Ziggler consistently.
And Hulk Hogan, apparently. And Rick Martel. Holy shit. All right. I think that's it. I think we've taken up enough of your time here. Thanks for hopping on. This was a lot of fun. We got to do something again.
And what you gonna do, brothers, when Party XP runs wild on you?
All right. I'll drive.
Yeah, sure.
I'll drive. It's your show.
Yeah, that's
At
true.
least you finally acknowledged it.
This is your episode you wanted to do. You
Uh-huh.
jerk. Fuck
Uh-huh.
you.
Yeah,
Yeah, the
yeah,
guy
yeah.
who wasn't here for half the year.
I know.
last year.
Exactly. Well, pardon me for having a child.
Yeah, your fault.